There was a time when knowledge was like a vast open field, where scholars could walk freely, gathering wisdom from various areas without encountering walls that restricted them. It was an era when a single individual could be a poet and a scientist, an inventor and an artist, a mathematician and a philosopher, without one identity canceling out the other. Leonardo da Vinci, the great polymath of the Renaissance, is the most iconic example of this age. He painted with the same skill with which he designed machines and studied the human body. His intellect knew no boundaries, and his genius flowed across multiple spheres of knowledge like a river branching into countless tributaries. But that time is long gone. Over the centuries, the amount of knowledge accumulated by humanity has grown exponentially. Advances in science, the arts, and technology have created an ocean of information too vast for any single person to navigate. Whereas it was once possible for someone to master multiple disciplines, today, that feat has become unattainable. Fields of study have divided into disciplines, which have further fragmented into subfields, and these, in turn, have split into even narrower specializations. Knowledge, once a vast and open territory, now resembles a series of closed corridors, where each expert walks a specific path, delving ever deeper into a single subject. Today, the world's leading specialists are people who dedicate their entire lives to understanding an extremely specific aspect of reality. A physicist may spend decades studying just one type of subatomic particle. A biologist may specialize exclusively in the behavior of a single insect within a highly specific ecosystem. A doctor may devote an entire career to studying a single disease, a single organ, or even a single surgical technique. The pursuit of knowledge is no longer an expedition across diverse lands, but rather a deep excavation at a single point, hoping to find answers buried in ever deeper layers of reality. This hyperspecialization has consequences. On one hand, it has led to incredible advancements in science, medicine, and technology. Each discovery within a niche field has the potential to transform lives. On the other hand, this extreme fragmentation has also created a curious phenomenon. Experts become so deep in their fields that they often lose sight of the bigger picture, like the old parable of the blind men and the elephant, where each man touches a different part of the animal and believes it to be something different. Today's scholars see only small portions of reality and rarely connect them. This leads to another problem: the difficulty of communication between fields of knowledge. An engineer may be a genius in structural calculations, but know nothing about biology. A neuroscientist may unlock the brain's secrets, but struggle to interpret a work of art. As a result, knowledge becomes compartmentalized, growing ever more inaccessible to those outside a particular discipline. The dialogue between different fields becomes challenging, as each develops its own language, methods, and ways of thinking. Hyperspecialization can also limit creativity and innovation. Major breakthroughs often occur when different fields of knowledge intersect and blend. The Renaissance was a golden age, precisely because it combined art, science, philosophy, and engineering into a single melting pot of ideas. Today, such fusion happens less frequently. Researchers are encouraged to dig deeper into their own fields rather than stray into other domains. Academic and professional pressures favor extreme specialization over multidisciplinarity. But is this fragmentation of knowledge an irreversible path? Or are there ways to regain a broad vision without sacrificing depth? Some initiatives are already attempting to address this problem. Interdisciplinary sciences are growing, and many universities are encouraging projects that merge different fields of knowledge. Technology can also help by connecting specialists from different niches and facilitating the exchange of ideas across disciplines. Moreover, human curiosity remains a powerful force. Even in a world where knowledge has become hyper-specialized, there will always be those who seek to connect the dots and build bridges between different realms of understanding. We may never see another Leonardo da Vinci, someone who masters multiple fields simultaneously. But that does not mean we must accept the fragmentation of knowledge as an inevitable fate. On the contrary, we should strive to integrate, connect, and engage in dialogue, ensuring that the advancement of knowledge does not turn us into specialists blind to the world around us. Genius has always been an enigma, a mystery that society has not always been able to recognize in time. When we think of the great geniuses of history, we imagine men and women who revolutionized the world with their ideas and creations. However, many of them lived their lives in obscurity, ignored, ridiculed, or simply forgotten. Van Gogh painted stars and sunflowers with an intensity that the world only understood after he was gone. Nikola Tesla dreamed of an electric future while living alone and penniless, ignored by the powerful figures of his time. Copernicus hesitated to publish his heliocentric theory, fearing reprisals, and his work only made an impact after his death. What do these examples have in common? They were invisible geniuses in their own time, and the question we must ask ourselves is, could the same thing be happening now? We live in a world of constant noise and distractions. The internet, social media culture, the demand for instant gratification, and the relentless pursuit of recognition have created an environment where it is difficult for a genius to stand out. In the past, an artist, scientist, or philosopher needed the approval of only a few patrons or academics for their work to be preserved. Today, genius must compete with algorithms, fleeting trends, and the ephemeral nature of human attention. If Van Gogh lived today, his paintings would compete with millions of images on Instagram. If Tesla were among us, he might be just another anonymous engineer among thousands of innovators trying to attract investors on LinkedIn. If Copernicus formulated his theory in modern times, it might be buried under the avalanche of conspiracy, theories, and misinformation circulating on the internet. Paradoxically, despite all its technology and access to information, modern society has become a hostile environment for the recognition of true genius. This happens because exceptional talent often goes against what is popular. A genius does not follow established rules, they break them. A genius does not think like the majority. They see beyond. Yet, we live in an era that rewards conformity, repetition, and adaptation to market expectations. If something does not generate immediate engagement, it is unlikely to be noticed. Genius, by nature, is disruptive. But how can someone revolutionize the world if they cannot even be heard? Another factor that makes geniuses invisible is the extreme specialization of knowledge. In the past, a scientist could explore multiple fields at once and still be understood by their peers. Today, discoveries happen in niches so specific that often only a small intellectual elite can grasp their real impact. A theoretical physicist may be developing equations that will completely change our understanding of the universe. But how many people would actually appreciate their importance? A programmer may be creating a revolutionary algorithm, yet they might go unnoticed in the vast ocean of code flooding the digital world. The isolation of modern geniuses is not only social, but also intellectual. Furthermore, time is a crucial factor in the perception of genius. Many brilliant minds are misunderstood because their ideas are ahead of their time. What seems absurd today may be obvious tomorrow. If Galileo challenged the church and was persecuted for saying the earth revolved around the sun, what uncomfortable truths are being ignored today? Who are the rejected thinkers of today who will be exalted in the future? Perhaps there are geniuses who have already discovered solutions to problems we do not even realize we have. Perhaps there are artists whose work has yet to find an audience ready to appreciate it. History teaches us that the recognition of genius almost always comes too late. Society resists the new because the new is uncomfortable. Geniuses challenge what we take for granted, and humanity, in its conservative nature, is reluctant to accept these changes. However, when time passes and groundbreaking ideas prove their worth, a curious phenomenon occurs. What was once rejected becomes celebrated. Van Gogh, who sold only one painting in his lifetime, now has works auctioned for exorbitant prices. Tesla, who died in poverty, is now a symbol of technological innovation. Copernicus, who hesitated to publish his theory, became a legend in astronomy. If the past teaches us that geniuses have always been hidden, the present suggests that we are still ignoring many of them. But how do we identify them? How do we ensure that we are not neglecting the brightest minds of our time? Perhaps we need to look beyond the obvious, seek out those who challenge norms, those whose ideas seem too strange to be immediately accepted. Perhaps the true geniuses of today are those who are being ridiculed, those who face resistance, those whom no one is willing to take seriously. The invisibility of genius is a cruel paradox. They carry within them a vision of the future, yet they are often unable to share it with the world. They are ahead of their time, but that means their own time does not understand them. And so, the wheel of history keeps turning. Today we ignore those who challenge the present. Tomorrow we will build statues in their honor. There was a time when individual genius was celebrated as the architect of human progress. Names like Newton, Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, and Marie Curie shone alone like beacons in the vast ocean of history. They were seen as solitary titans, forging discoveries that forever changed our understanding of the world. But times have changed. Today, society no longer exalts the individual. It exalts the collective. Success no longer belongs to a single visionary, but to a team, a company, a research lab. The brilliance of individual genius has been diluted in the joint effort of many minds working in harmony. But is this shift beneficial? Or are we suffocating creative individuality in the name of a collective ideal? Today, the greatest scientific and technological advancements are not the product of a single brilliant mind, but of thousands of specialists gathered in massive organizations. Companies like Google, Tesla, SpaceX, and AI research labs employ teams composed of some of the brightest minds on the planet, working together at a rapid pace of innovation. The development of new vaccines, for instance, is no longer the work of a single revolutionary scientist, but a coordinated effort involving biologists, pharmacists, engineers, and data analysts across the world. The same applies to advances in physics, space exploration, and quantum computing. This model of collective innovation has produced impressive results. Teamwork allows complex problems to be tackled from a multidisciplinary perspective, with specialists contributing their expertise to solve challenges that would be impossible for a single person. International collaborations enable faster breakthroughs, reducing the time required for new technologies to emerge. Furthermore, the structure of large corporations and scientific institutions ensures the necessary resources for funding long-term research. However, there is a side effect to this model: the invisibility of the individual. In the past, an inventor's or scientist's name was directly tied to their discovery. When we think of the theory of relativity, we immediately recall Einstein. When we talk about electricity, we think of Tesla and Edison. The evolution of physics is associated with Newton. But today, who are the faces behind the biggest innovations? Who are the individuals responsible for the breakthroughs in artificial intelligence? Who led the research that made it possible to create the cutting-edge chips powering our computers and smartphones? The problem is that, in the midst of valuing the collective, individual merit has been diluted. Whereas we once celebrated the genius of a lone visionary, today only the founders of big tech companies receive any recognition, and even then, often in a superficial manner. Elon Musk's name is widely known, but how many SpaceX engineers who actually designed the rockets are recognized by the public? We know that Google revolutionized internet search, but does anyone know the engineers who created the algorithms that made it possible? This lack of recognition is not just a matter of prestige. It has profound implications for how knowledge is transmitted. When an innovative idea is attributed to an organization rather than a person, the story behind the discovery is lost. The inspiring narratives of scientists overcoming obstacles, inventors persisting despite failures, and artists fighting for recognition, all of this dissolves into the anonymity of the collective. And without these stories, we also lose the ability to inspire future generations to follow the same path. Moreover, there is a psychological aspect to consider. Being recognized for one's talent and effort is one of the greatest human motivations. When that recognition disappears, many brilliant minds may feel that their work holds no individual value, leading to discouragement. In a world where credit is shared so broadly that it becomes meaningless, many talents may simply choose to follow conventional paths, lacking the drive to innovate or stand out. But is this shift toward the collective at the expense of the individual irreversible? Are we doomed to live in a world where personal genius becomes invisible? Perhaps not. There are signs that this dynamic may be changing. With the rise of the internet, the decentralization of information, and the democratization of knowledge, more and more people have the opportunity to build their own reputations without relying on large institutions. Independent scientists, freelance developers, and innovators are finding ways to stand out, whether through online publications, direct collaborations with the public, or crowd-funded projects. Additionally, social media and knowledge-sharing platforms can be used to restore the value of the individual within a collective. A scientist can now share their research directly, without needing the endorsement of major corporations. An artist can showcase their work without depending on a traditional gallery. A programmer can develop an innovative software and distribute it without needing approval from a large company. The question remains, how do we balance the necessity of teamwork with the recognition of individual merit? Perhaps the key is to create an environment where both can coexist. Valuing the collective does not have to mean erasing individual identities. We can celebrate teams without forgetting the brilliant minds within them. We can recognize joint efforts without neglecting the individual stories that make these achievements possible. In the end, innovation and progress have always depended on both the collective and the individual. Individual genius needs an environment that allows it to flourish, but that environment also needs exceptional individuals to keep innovation moving forward. If we can find that balance, we will ensure that the great minds of the future not only exist, but are seen, recognized, and celebrated. Because at the end of the day, behind every great team, there are always one or more visionaries making a difference. The challenge is ensuring they are not lost in the crowd. We live in an era of overwhelming knowledge. In a matter of seconds, anyone with internet access can research everything from the principles of relativity to the most advanced equations of quantum mechanics. With a single click, we have more information at our fingertips than Isaac Newton accumulated in his entire lifetime. More data than Einstein could have ever dreamed of accessing. What once required years of study and dedication to discover can now be found through a simple Google search or an educational YouTube video. But has this ease of access made the world more conducive to genius? Or, paradoxically, has the excess of information suffocated the emergence of new great minds? In the past, knowledge was a precious and rare commodity. The great scientists of the Renaissance had to travel to gain access to rare books, ancient manuscripts, and reliable sources. A single mistake in a calculation could take years to correct, because there was no instant sharing network for discoveries. The pace of innovation was slower, but this also meant that vast gaps in understanding were waiting to be filled. When Newton formulated the laws of motion, he was exploring an expansive and largely uncharted intellectual landscape. When Darwin published his theory of evolution, he introduced a revolutionary idea to a world still grappling with the origins of life. These giants of the past had the privilege of being pioneers, sailing through unexplored seas. Today, however, the knowledge landscape is entirely different. With billions of scientific articles, globally accessible databases, and algorithms that deliver instant information, the space for groundbreaking discoveries has become far more restricted. If, in the past, enormous gaps in knowledge were waiting to be filled by a single genius, today, those gaps are smaller and often require entire teams of specialists to explore. The problem is not just the saturation of information, but how we handle this overload. The internet bombards us daily with an avalanche of data, articles, opinions, and news. What was once a privilege, access to knowledge, has now become a challenge, as we must discern what truly matters amid the noise. The effect of this is that many potential geniuses may feel lost, unable to find a clear path toward a meaningful discovery. If everything has already been studied, if all the questions seem to have already been asked, where is the space for innovation? Moreover, the digital era has brought with it a new phenomenon, the culture of superficiality. Whereas great thinkers of the past spent years immersed in a single subject, today, human attention is fragmented. Instead of diving deep, many people prefer to consume knowledge in small doses, through short videos, quick articles, or social media posts. The problem is that genius requires depth. Great discoveries do not happen by chance. They demand extreme dedication, focus, and the ability to see beyond the obvious. But how can we cultivate this depth in a world that constantly encourages distraction? This does not mean that there is no longer room for intellectual revolutions. Great mysteries still await discovery. The nature of consciousness, the origins of the universe, the cure for incurable diseases. But unlike in the past, these answers will not come from a single isolated genius. They will be the result of collaboration among countless brilliant minds working together to uncover the world's final secrets. The challenge of our time is no longer to find information, but to filter it, interpret it, and connect it in unprecedented ways. If, in the past, a genius was someone who filled the great gaps in human knowledge, perhaps today, a genius is someone who can find meaning amidst the chaos of information. The true revolutionary will not be the one who accumulates the most data, but the one who knows how to transform it into something new. And in this sense, the excess of information may not be an obstacle but an opportunity for those who know how to use it wisely. Genius has never been an instant process. The great thinkers of the past spent years, sometimes decades, immersed in their reflections, disconnected from the outside world, exploring their ideas until they fully matured. Newton formulated his fundamental laws after a long period of forced isolation. Darwin spent years collecting data, analyzing patterns, and slowly refining his theory of evolution before publishing it. Einstein developed his theory of relativity while working alone in a patent office, far from academic pressures. What did these geniuses have in common? Time. Time to think deeply. Time to make mistakes, start over, reflect, and connect the dots. But is that still possible in today's world? We live in the age of hyperconnectivity. Notifications, social media, emails, calls, short videos, infinite information feeds, everything constantly competes for our attention. Silence has become a rare commodity. Creative solitude is almost non-existent. Every moment of reflection is interrupted by a new digital stimulus, preventing any thought from reaching the depth necessary to become truly innovative. When was the last time someone had the luxury of spending hours, days, or months contemplating a single idea without distractions? The problem is not just the sheer number of distractions, but how they rewire our way of thinking. The human brain is being conditioned to seek instant gratification. If something does not yield immediate results, we feel like we are wasting time. If an idea does not receive likes or engagement on social media, it seems irrelevant. This dynamic is incompatible with genius. Revolutionary thinking requires patience, persistence, and above all, discomfort. Great discoveries do not emerge from moments of leisure, but from the friction of doubt, from the prolonged effort of trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. However, has genius truly disappeared? Or have we simply changed the way we recognize it? In the past, a genius was someone who introduced a philosophical, scientific, or artistic revolution. But today, in a world dominated by technology, perhaps genius has migrated to other fields. The great modern geniuses might be in artificial intelligence, neuroscience, quantum computing, biotechnology. highly complex fields that require a different kind of reasoning, more fragmented and interdisciplinary. Perhaps the issue is not the absence of genius, but the shift in how we identify and value these brilliant minds. Moreover, the very concept of genius may be evolving. In the past, a genius was a solitary figure, an isolated visionary who challenged established knowledge. Today, innovation often arises from collaboration between multiple intelligences, each contributing a piece of the puzzle. This means that instead of a single Newton or Einstein, we may have entire networks of geniuses working together, unseen by the public eye, but profoundly impactful for humanity's progress. The challenge of our time is not just to rediscover the value of deep thinking, but also to create spaces where it can happen. Genius cannot flourish in an environment of constant stimulation. We must reclaim the importance of silence, patience, and contemplation. The great ideas of the future will not come from minds overwhelmed by excessive information, but from those who resist distraction and dare to dive deeper, where no one else has the time or courage to explore.